Good morning. So there are 10 days until Christmas. So I just wanted to give us something to consider this morning as we continue to prepare our hearts for celebrating Christmas. Next to my place, I have this huge cedar tree. I'm not sure how tall it is, but it goes up there quite a ways. It leaves lots of stuff on my roof, and I always have to go up and clean out my gutters. But it's a great picture of the nation of Israel, if I can use it as a metaphor this morning. God built the nation of Israel into a powerful and great nation from its days of arriving on the doorsteps of Egypt, leading them out of the nation to the promised land, and developing them into a great nation. It was King David that God made a covenant with to make his name great, similar to what he had said to Abraham back in the day, that he would establish the throne of David, that there would always be a descendant of David on the throne for eternity. And that he would make David great amongst the greatest people of the earth. There was lots of aspects to this covenant that he made. David's son Solomon became king after David and built the first temple and became incredibly wise, rich, wealthy, well-known, probably one of the most famous kings of Israel. But under his rule and the taxes and whatnot that he gave, when he passed away and his son took over, the nation fell apart into two kingdoms: the northern kingdom called Israel and the southern kingdom called Judah. And they kind of went their own ways. They walked away from God and came under the judgment of God. Israel much faster than Judah did. Judah at least had some kings that led them towards God and embracing the ways of God, but Israel didn't. And God used the nation of Assyria to take Israel, the northern kingdom, into captivity, took them out of the promised land to Assyria, where they were in captivity for years. It was Babylon who defeated Assyria and ultimately brought the southern kingdom, Judah, into the same punishment as the northern kingdom. And over the course of time, as God did his work in the nation, continuing to cause them to grow, but calling them back in the midst of the punishment into proper relationship with him, he used the nation of Persia to allow the people to go back to the promised land. It is a fascinating history, and being a little bit of a history geek, I kind of get into it. So I'll try not to go too far into that weirdness. But it is a fascinating history, and it has impact for us today at Christmas. When God was leading them into this time of punishment, he used the metaphor in Isaiah chapter 10 of cutting down the forest, Israel and the nations that surrounded Israel. And just, if you can picture and visualize just a forest full of stumps, this tree being gone and just a massive stump being in its place. But as he brings them back to the promised land and he fulfills the promise that he had given to King David, of his descendants always being on the throne, he talks of the eternal king who would sit on the throne for all eternity, the Messiah that would be a descendant of David. It's one of the prophecies that we have to take into consideration at Christmas time. And in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 5, in kind of that poetic prophecy kind of writing, Isaiah writes, "A shoot will come from the stump of Jesse. From the roots of a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist." So why is this important for us at Christmas? Well, because Jesus Christ and the birth of Christ was the coming of that shoot, out of the stump of Jesse, the descendant of King David. Jesus Christ is the Messiah, the promised one. He is the one who reigns for all eternity, and he's called the King of Kings. And we celebrate him at Christmas. We celebrate his birth. We celebrate his coming. We celebrate the hope that we have in Jesus Christ, the joy that we have because of his salvation, the anticipation that we have of his return, of his coming again, and the peace that he has made to return his people into proper relationship with God the Father. And so all of this is what we're celebrating as we celebrate Christmas, the coming of the Messiah, the birth of Jesus Christ. And so as we go into today, just be encouraged. Reflect on that. The hope of the nations is Jesus Christ and his salvation. Have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy that thought, and may the peace of God flow out of that. Enjoy today.